Welcome to the class. Today we are going to discuss modal and modality. Modal auxiliaries are important part of English grammatical structure. That is, in the formation of a sentence, our understanding about modal auxiliary plays an important role. We want to be able to use English sentences carefully, though effectively. We want to understand people carefully, and we want people to understand us when we speak. For these purposes, it is important for us to look at the nuances of what modality means and how modal auxiliaries are used in the structure of the grammar, that is the structure of the language, and the function, that is the function of its uses, how we use and what we want to achieve through the uses. These are the critical points that we need to understand in this chapter. Hence, the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is the distinction between auxiliaries and verbs. In the context of this chapter, we want to call this modal auxiliaries. What's the difference between a verb and an auxiliary? There are two types of auxiliaries. One type that indicate tense. The other type is called modals. The difference between the two is tense auxiliaries like is, are, am, was, and were. These tell you about the embedded tense in them. For example, the first set is from present tense. The second set is from past tense. There are certain auxiliaries used for future as well, and they are shall and will. On the other hand, we have modals as auxiliaries, and modals can only come in the form of auxiliaries. Hence, the categorical distinction between the verb and auxiliary modals is modals are only auxiliaries, they are not verbs. The second distinction is modals are non-tensed auxiliaries. Modal auxiliaries do not indicate any tense. For example, when we say, "Can I tell you something?" In this sentence, as you go through all the examples on your screen, all the parts of sentences marked in red are examples of modals. They are also auxiliaries, and hence they do not indicate any tense. Take a moment, pause for a moment and think about it. When you ask somebody or when someone else asks you, "Can I tell you something?" What type of tense is there? And if at all there is any tense, is it coming from the modal auxiliary? The answer is no. So can does not tell you about any tense. In all, would won't tell you about any tense. Might, must, should, these are not the markers of tense. In the same breath, it is also important for us to understand that auxiliaries like could or might or should or would, these auxiliaries, these modal auxiliaries are often misunderstood as past form. They are not past forms, they are independent modal auxiliaries. There is a reason why people believe or would want to believe about these being past. For example, it's easy for us to see the parallel between the two. We see could derived from can. We see might derived from may. We see should derived from shall. And we see would derived from will. We want to believe that this set is responsible for the derivation of this set, whereas the answer is no. They are independent auxiliaries. A simple ordinary proof in this context is, can a future tense marker have past form? Shall cannot have a past form. Will cannot have a past form. Similarly, may and can do not have past forms. With that background information in mind, let's look at these examples, see what they do, how they occur in the sentences, and what is it that we intend to convey when we use a modal auxiliary in a sentence. For that, we need to also look at the derivation of the term modality. It comes from moods. So, modality is a grammatical representation of mood. What is it? It's about non-factual things, in the sense that when we say modal auxiliary, we are not talking about its being factual. So when we say, can I tell you something? This is a sentence which is used here. Modal auxiliary can is used for seeking permission, and that's all is the purpose. Whether or not actually question is asked is not the guarantee of modality. That's what we mean when we say not being factual. Look at it. When we say we should drive slow, it's about obligation, not about being factually correct. Hence, this distinction is important for us to understand. It talks about through the uses of modality, that is modal auxiliaries, we can derive multiple interpretations. Some give us necessity, some help us understand possibility, and many more. So, these auxiliaries help us express these intentionalities in the sentences, and that we do through modal auxiliaries. There are two types of mode. One is called imperative, the other is called subjunctive or optative. Here you have examples. Help me with these issues. So when you ask for something, that's called imperative, and when you wish for something, that's called optative or subjunctive. These two modes and their various other interpretations, when they are expressed in grammar, that's called modality. In other words, these terms, these auxiliaries like can, could, may, might, shall, should, must, all of these are modal auxiliaries, and they have necessity, possibility, and some more emphasis, types of emphasis, interpretations in the sentences. So, structurally speaking, they are non-inflectional. In other words, can will not have any other inflection on it. That's an identification of modal auxiliary. For example, we cannot add ing, we cannot add es, we cannot add anything to this auxiliary. So these are some of the, this is the list of some of the things like possibility, ability, necessity, certainty, obligation, willingness. These are some of the interpretations of modal auxiliaries. So when you go back and look at, can I tell you something? What kind of interpretation do we get? This is seeking permission. What can I do for you? Willingness. I can play piano. Possibility. I would love to hear from you. Again, willingness. So every time you look at a sentence, you might like these dresses. Possibility. When we look at these interpretations about possibility, obligation, if you go deeper and look at these possibilities could again have multiple interpretations, like some could be strong possibility, some could be weak possibility. And all these things are expressed through modal auxiliaries. In other words, we need to pay attention to these details when we see these auxiliaries used in a sentence to be able to understand their appropriate interpretation, and also we need to know these things for us to be able to use these terms for appropriate interpretation by our hearer. These are the things, these are the important aspects that we need to know about modality. Take a moment, take a break here and make a list of the things that we have been discussing here. Second step, take a look at sentences that you read or that come to your mind and write down few sentences in your notebook and then underline the modal auxiliaries in those sentences. Having underlined those modal auxiliaries, please look at their interpretations and try to see what they are trying to convey exactly. That's the way to understand grammatical nuances at an advanced level. And when you go through this exercise, these types of exercises, the results they yield stay in your subconscious for further processing. And when you speak, they show up. That is, you can observe the results of these things in your speaking ability, in your writing ability, and so on. One more time, this exercise is important for you. Please spend 15 to 20 minutes time on this aspect of grammar, because they will stay with you when you do some exercises on that. Going back, you can look at the modal auxiliaries and tense auxiliaries in English in details. If you want a footnote here, we have it here: can and could, may and might. They are independent auxiliaries. They are not related to one another. In other words, they are not like these auxiliaries are not. Set 2 is not derived from set 1. Same thing here, set 1 does not give you set 2. They are independent auxiliaries. Like we have tense auxiliaries in English, you can see is, are, am. They give you singular interpretations. They give you plural interpretations. So on one axis, you have these things, singular, and So this is present and this is past. And these are plural. Shall and will as future auxiliaries can be used interchangeably and do not have singular or plural distinction. Anyone can become. Now if you go through our examples and pause and see how we want you to do exercises like anyone can become a minister. If you hear this sentence, underline this one and think about the meaning of this sentence. This is talking about a possibility. Can I ask you a question? This is seeking permission. She can walk fast, indicating ability to do something. They can speak several languages. Again, ability. So, one more time, modal auxiliaries do not have any inflection on them. No, they don't mark tense. They do not have any number and person distinction. And they have specific function. So, when you look at them, this is how the sentence works. Sachin can speak English. This is the modal in red. And once you get one auxiliary, you cannot have two. This is also the answer why to the question why modal auxiliaries do not mark tense, because we cannot have two auxiliaries in one sentence. When we look at the negation counterpart of these auxiliaries, then we understand them better. So look at it. Raju likes pizza. Raju liked pizza. To understand tense is embedded in the main verb in these two sentences. In one case, it is present tense. In the other case, it is past tense. When we use the negative, then we see that negative forces separation between tense and the main verb. As you can see here, now in this second sentence, the moment it is negative, the tense is separated in this form. Tense and number is separated from this main verb. Same thing happens in the past tense. From this main verb, tense gets separated because of this intervention of negative element in that. So we are only using the negative sentences here to show you intervention of tense. That is how tense is on the verb. But in the case of the use of modal auxiliaries, there is no tense on that. You have even with the in the negative sentences, it works the same way. So it does not force any separation of tense from the main verb. It's what we are trying to show you here. And when you practice these things, from the sentences, try to get these many interpretations. You will see this is a possible list of interpretations that we get from uses of modal auxiliaries in sentences in general. If you find, when you work on these examples, when you work on independent sentences, most of the sentences will be covered with these interpretations. However, if you find more, make a list of those interpretations here. That will be useful in, that will be a useful outcome of your practice. With this, we stop here with the idea that you understand the distinction between tense and modal auxiliaries you also understand, or at least our idea is that it helps you understand why we use modal auxiliaries and what is it that we call modal auxiliaries. Eventually, our main goal is to help you use them in a more conscious fashion for better confidence. Thank you.